um, what was I saying? So basically, the story of how I got here, it was kind of through tragedy, but worse became worse when I returned to the United States, and my partners had done something that I told them not to, and basically got us ripped off for every cent that I had. So I suddenly found myself unexpectedly broke, and I went to work for a lady that was setting me up in really bad circumstances, and that became clear very rapidly. And so we basically just bailed to South America without any plan, except for a Shopify store, and the license got pulled almost as soon as we got here. It was doing really well, so I think I've told all those stories before. I don't really want to focus too much on the all the crazy roller coaster ride that got us here. But to talk a little bit more about the immersion in the culture in South America, and the really tremendous lessons that I've learned in terms of the way that American or North American capitalism and the political system and the religious ideologies, and also Europe to an extent, um, but the way that people treat people here, the way that you can go into a neighborhood that, if you had the same neighborhood in the United States, you would be terrified to walk down the streets just based on how it looks. But, with the exception of one or two major cities here, that's not the case in Ecuador. I leave all of my equipment here, three guitars, this microphone. Uh, People leave the laptops out. There are people that walk by here, but we'll go to town and I leave everything out overnight, except I bring the laptop in, but I know I don't need to. Like, no one has anything here. Like, they're dirt poor. We walked by a lady that had all of her family up in this tree collecting these amazing fruits. Um, and I wanted some fruit, and I was going to give her $1, and they have like no money at all, and she didn't really want the dollar. I mean, eventually she let me give it to her. Um, thank you, city. But you know what I mean. It's just really kind of extraordinary to see how much happier people are, and just how much more sort of fundamentally decent people with absolutely no money have. And the thing is, it's a little bit different because down here, if you don't have a lot of money, you're not necessarily desperate, because you don't have the kind of pressures that you have in the United States. Now, there are influences from the United States that are making that increasingly difficult. And I think it was 2008 or something. I don't really follow this stuff very closely, so I could have the year totally wrong. But the president of Ecuador, who before this was loved by the citizens, had a meeting with Barack Obama, and within like a week after the meeting, they had switched to the um, American dollar, and bulldozers from the oil companies rolled into the last. It's not actually the last, but it was one of three uncontacted tribes in this part of Ecuador. The oil companies rolled into that, which was protected until Obama came down, struck a deal with the president, and that was the beginning of a sort of decline that, of course, was sold to the American or the Ecuadorian people, as a massive opportunity, that they were getting a bailout by being put on the American dollar. And it's a double-edged sword. In a lot of ways, it's been difficult for some people because the prices of living have gone up, but the growth and opportunity has increased. So it's sort of that classic, unfortunately classic story of the United States, where this wealth disparity just grows and grows and grows and grows and grows. And so it seems like the United States almost has a magic wand where they can touch a place and transfer their sickness to those places. And another interesting thing that I have, it's not that Wolfied, it's not that primitive here. I am on the he's asking about, or I don't know, this person is asking about how is their electricity here. And There's, the Shuar, way out in the deep jungle. I mean, you have to fly to get there. It's like 120 miles past the last road. They have Wi-Fi. You know what I mean? And it's not. I don't know that it's the best thing that's ever happened. It's a weird thing to go out into the jungle and see people living traditionally sitting around staring at their phones. All the adolescents, in particular, are all just staring at their phones, and they're like, mostly naked, face paint, middle of the jungle. um I just really, really crazy thing to witness. um and also, of course, that influence, and this is what I was getting to before. We hear that? I don't know what the hell that is. That happens all the time too, that there are new sounds, new creatures, new. I just saw some bugs creating a colony over there. I don't even know what like subcategory they're in. They weren't beetles. They didn't look like ants. Like, and there's like 50 of them on this cluster of leaves, and there's little tiny ones and bigger ones, as if the like big ones were hanging around and like raising the babies or something. It was mind-boggling. No, that's what I'm saying, Jose. You actually, yeah, it's harder. Okay, yeah, it's harder, but a lot of times it is there. As I was saying, the Ashwar and some of these deep jungle tribes are getting Wi-Fi, and this is just in the last 6 months or so, that there's internet like way out in the jungle. But as one of the things I have noticed from living, like the last place that we lived was called Misawali, and it was right on the edge of the jungle. I mean, it was not on the edge of the jungle, but on the edge of where civilization meets the jungle. It's like the last really fully developed town, before it's just like Quechua communities that are very basic housing, and you know what I mean. It's the last like town. There's communities, plenty of them afterwards, and roads still, but the last and the indigenous communities are that are bordering the civilization are so much more toxic. They've been poisoned just by their proximity to um, civilization. It seems there is a lot more depression. Alcoholism's much higher. There actually was theft there, pretty badly actually. I mean, they wouldn't take anything expensive, because they indigenous don't think about it the way we do. Like my shoes would be more likely to get stolen than a guitar, because they don't think like I could go and sell this for money. They're stealing based on need, which is also maybe not quite as bad. Still obnoxious when your stuff is missing, but you know what I mean? They're not looking for money, they're not looking for valuables, they're looking for utility. But yeah, things would go missing a lot around the property. And the deeper into the jungle we've gone, the less alcoholism there is, the friendlier people are. The teenagers don't seem depressed. They're not staring at their phones all the time, even when there is internet. So that was really a massive, I don't want to say wake up call, because I was already pretty sure that that's how it would be. But, it's a crazy thing to actually see that the further away from civilization you get, the less shit there is, basically. Um, Yeah, I mean, I think probably the biggest problem for the tribes having Wi-Fi is that, they're going to get a very skewered, pers- their perception of what it's like in the modern outside world is not going to be realistic. And so it makes them depressed. It makes them want things that aren't really even there, at least not in the way that they're going to perceive them to be when they're online. So it might cause them to sort of devalue their life in the jungle. Although, let me tell you, that is much more difficult than you would think. One of the reasons people don't need a lot of money here is that if they already own their land, there are fruits like, once you learn a little bit how to identify stuff, like right now, I could walk in any one of four directions, and like over there, I could get, and I'm talking about wild from the jungle. I could get a what are they called? It's like a guanabana, but it's orange, and it's called a guanabana de monte. No, there's no crime at all, none whatsoever. There's like petty theft every once in a while, But like rape and murder, there are no cops. There are no cops. Zero. Like cops never come here. Never, ever, ever. Even in Misawali, that is like a civilized town, the cops don't come. And you see cops here holding hands, like men and women, holding hands, walking with their arms around each other. Like they treat you like it's crazy. The difference between a cop in the United States and a cop here in Ecuador, and I'm talking even in the cities, like the way they just speak to you as if they're just another person, and they'll show each other affection in public and stuff. It's nuts, man. You really, that was like probably the biggest lesson that when I came down here was to realize that the people in the United States are just as fucked up and insane as I thought they were when I lived there, and it's actually far, far worse. And also the situation with law enforcement and the government and all that is just completely nuts. Um, but yeah, I was saying that there really is food everywhere. There's this palm right here. You can pull the shoots out and eat them. It's kind of like water chestnut? Is that what it's called? Water chestnut, yeah. And then you can also make this roof. The pava that is around me is made from that palm. And we actually will pull the palm leaves up and cut them up and then mush them, and then you can baste chicken with them and fish and stuff. There are other uses. Oh, then the flower produces a big explosion of pistils that are sort of like angel hair pasta. It's crazy. And then right over there, there's this giant. Here, let me go grab one. Giant tagua fruit that is like this big spiky ball of it's a little bit difficult for me to show you things because my camera's 6 minutes behind or whatever, or at least a few minutes behind. But each one of these is like it's like a big cluster, and there's like one, two, three, four, five, six, like 10 or 12 individual fruits. And I don't know if you guys can see that, but it's a tagua seed, which is seed ivory. And you can actually make jewelry out of it that's kind of expensive. It it's crazy. It's like quartz crystal, and it's rock hard. I mean, it's literally like a quartz crystal. And then you can peel them open, and there's like this orange flesh inside that you can eat. And let's see, what else could I pick? Okay, and then there's these things, which kind of looks like a lemon or something, but definitely nothing like a lemon. The flesh inside is like almost gelatinous, and it has like this like really super sticky latex, and it kind of tastes like a cross between like softer than any pear, but kind of in the ballpark of pear, with maybe some like caramelized sugar in it or something like creme brulee. And these things are just raining down out of the sky. And then this cluster of fruit right here, there was probably like 200 pounds of this on the one, at least. I mean, this is like, yeah, I mean, there were this, it's like 10 pounds at least, I would say. It's heavy as hell. And there's, this giant, I guess it's a palm. It looks like a fern to me. Um, but, the whole thing is covered in these giant masses of this stuff. And the ferns make these giant fronds that you can eat, and each one is like the size of a hamburger. Um, uh, and that's all stuff that is within like 30 to 50 feet of me at the moment. Not to mention the fact that, any medicine that I might need also, we have Bobinsana over here, which is like helps with like mental flexibility. And now we know why it has harmalas that are the same as those found in the ayahuasca vine, but in much lower concentrations. So drinking a tea from it is going to help with your neuroplasticity. And on a shamanic level, this is really interesting. You learn to kind of look at the nature of a plant because it's an expression of the energy behind it. And in the case of Bobinsana, probably too dark for you guys to. You see that Bobinsana over there? That thing with all the purple flowers. In the case of Bobinsana, it's really springy. and it has these explosions of little white and pink hairs. And so you can see this connection to opening the heart because it just looks like a little explosion of like love fluff. And the branches are really springy. So that elasticity of mind and the opening of the heart, you can see it when you look at the plant. And then it gives you a little bit of energy, and it has all sorts of other, helpful um, alkaloid constituents. There's guayusa tree right there, which is a tea that's full of antioxidants and uh, vitamins and caffeine, and but it's much better for you than coffee. Um, there's just all sorts of medicine everywhere, and plants and fruit. Um, yeah, man, no problem, Flezick. That was probably the first ayahuasca vine that I had ever actually found on my own and cut, um, which was a pretty cool experience because for me that was like the stuff of legends from my childhood. Pretty extraordinary to see one in person for the first time, um, that I had found. So where were we in our tale of Ecuador? Yeah, I mean, and it's difficult for me to all I can talk about is my own experience. And it's worked out for me that I have been able to improvise income, and it hasn't been easy. Like when I was sick, we definitely got ourselves into, buried. But I think without that, we would have not had any problem doing it. And I guess I always want to offer something that is of utility to people that watch the channel. I don't want to just tell stories and entertain, but offer something that's actually, pragmatically something you can employ to your benefit. And I would say that if you feel like you are trapped in a job that you hate, or, just in the United States in general, um, there's no reason, I don't think, why you can't acquire some kind of skill that allows you to either work from a laptop or, some sort of artisanal thing, that you can move to a country that has a much lower cost of living than the United States. And I think it's really important that people see through the lie firsthand, that it's really not what they tell you that it is. And the laws in Ecuador, for example, are not necessarily less restrictive than in the United States, but certainly the feeling of having all of your every move monitored, and getting pulled over and searched in your car over nothing, and all of this just insane Gestapo fascism kind of crap that you deal with in the United States. And also everyone thinks that they have so much opportunity and they can make all this money, and most people are struggling and not really paying their rent, and it's just not it's not the way to live. And it really is true that, hello Misty, that in South America, particularly in the jungle, there's just so much life and so many expressions of the mystery to keep your fascination. uh and I, that's probably the most important thing, that the mundane does not consume your being. And that is a big part of what is destroying the people in the United States. It's that disconnection from, not just from nature, but from a sense of purpose and from the mystery. That I talk a lot about flow state. The hell, that's got to be like a giant locust or something. It just is so loud, and it sounds big. I'm assuming you guys can hear that. I mean, this mic picks up everything. Um, but yeah, so flow state, as a lifestyle, that's kind of like my objective. I didn't know that for a long time, but after studying a little bit about flow state, I realized that's the nomenclature that I needed to communicate about this stuff. But one of the primary requirements of getting into flow state is taking risks, and being inspired, and having your attention focused on something. And I think when you're living in the kind of circumstances uh, that make up the environment in the United States, it's nearly impossible to maintain the kind of connection and fascination and um, I mean, and there's also this sort of routine bound, uh, the way that you generally live there if you have a 9 to 5 job. And yeah, I mean, it's just routine. It feels safe and comfortable. But that safety and comfort, taking that risk element out of your life, is part of the reason why people are disconnected from the universal mind and the uh, deeper consciousness that really makes life, in my opinion, worth living. And here in the rainforest, it's not really possible to do that. Something is going to jar you out of that um, every time you go outside. So, uh, more than anything, that's why it's so difficult for me to leave. And then look, I mean, I'm outside. I don't have long sleeves on. Sitting by a river. I mean, during the day we get bitten by sandflies, um, a little bit, but mosquitoes are no worse than Virginia or somewhere like that. Um, I don't know if you guys have any specific questions for me. I feel like when we had the audio problems earlier, I got a little bit derailed, and I've never really found my. you know, and honestly, I was planning to answer questions, and I haven't gotten a whole lot of them. But basically, yeah, I mean, you're super safe in the jungle, as long as well, I shouldn't be that general. In Ecuador, in Quechua communities, you're very safe. There are different environments, though. Down in Shuar territory, they're a little bit more hostile to outsiders. There's a vegan community down there that got a little bit out of line and told them that they had to not mine illegally on their property, and the Shuar came with shotguns and beat them up. And um, you know, so you got to know your place, that's for sure. And I don't know what they were thinking, trying to tell the Shuar what to do on their own. I don't care if they bought it. That doesn't mean anything, except to them. They have a deed in their hand, but to the Shuar, it's still their land, and they're going to tell them not to dig for gold. I mean, I didn't really feel a lot of empathy for them. Um, you know, that is another crazy thing. That is probably the worst thing. Yeah, wild animals. What do you mean, worrying about wild animals? No. The most dangerous thing down here, there are two things that you have to have some awareness of. One of them is called a Brazilian wandering spider, and if it bites you and you're a guy, you can have a hard on for 48 hours that is extremely painful, and you might die. You might die if you're a female too, but you won't have a 48-hour erection. The Brazilian wandering spider, like if it were to bite my son, he almost definitely would die before we could get him to the hospital. Almost no chance that he would survive that. So, and they're extremely aggressive. It's unfortunate. It does seem that they know that they are poisonous. And they have another interesting habit where they'll stick their arms straight up in the air when they feel threatened, like an erection. And it's just, nature is just such a wild thing. Yeah, but so the Brazilian wandering spider, but you just have to like check your clothes before you put them on. I've never found one in my clothes, but we did have a friend who I don't really like anymore, but she put her coat on one time, and one ran out of her sleeve and then up onto her shoulder, and that's messed up right there. I've heard of people reaching like onto a shelf and getting bitten. So you have to learn to look where you put your hands. One time I picked a Bobensana flower. No, I didn't. I just touched the Bobensana, but I didn't look first. There was a bullet ant in the flower, and it bit me, and that is like the worst. It felt like someone had smashed my finger with a hammer for 2 days. It won't kill you, but it hurts like hell. Extremely painful. And then the other thing that you have to worry about, well, bullet ants too. You need to know what a bullet ant looks like. You need to watch where you put your hands, but you need to know what a bullet ant looks like. or Congo ant, the Quechua call them, uh, and then the Dos Equis. If you have a run-in with the Dos Equis, just like the Brazilian wandering spider, the chances that it's gonna go run afoul on you are much, much higher. Yeah, right. Much, much higher than other types of snakes, because generally, if you run into a snake, it's gonna run away. A Brazilian wandering, I mean, a Dos Equis, or they also call them a fer-de-lance, I think, and maybe even Bushmaster might be the same snake, but definitely fer-de-lance, Dos Equis, those two are this snake. It's a viper. Um, I think it has replaced the taipon on the list of the most deadly snakes in the world. So actually, Australia does not have the top 10 most venomous animals. The Amazon does have the top two, at least. The other eight still, but I think they've decided that the Brazilian wandering spider is the most poisonous spider, most venomous spider, and the Dos Equis is the most venomous snake. And we have both of those things here. I've only seen a Dos Equis one time, and you could definitely tell it was a viper. I mean, it has that diamond-shaped head. But honestly, you think you're in the jungle, you're going to see snakes everywhere. It's not true. You hardly. I never see snakes. I've seen 6 snakes alive or something the entire time I've been in the jungle. If that, like 6 maybe. One was no immunizations. One was a coral snake in my house under my sink, and my son found it. Good thing he had the sense to not try to touch it, because that's just bad news. By the way, there's a rumor. Somebody said this in my chat last time, that they can't bite you because they're rear fanged. It's not true. The thing is that they're unlikely to inject enough venom to kill you. But don't think that you can just pick up a coral snake. People do it a lot. I used to know a guy that would wear a coral snake around his neck, and he was never bitten. But I wouldn't advise it. And it's definitely not true that they can't bite you, or that they can't venomate you, and venomate. Um, so yeah, those are honestly, most of the animals here are pretty chill. I've had close encounters with monkeys and a tapir that were wild or semi-wild. The truth is that a lot of the animals that are on the border of the rainforest are acclimated enough to people that, like, you guys can see the video of the tapir on my channel. It just walks right up to you, and you're gonna pet it. You know what I mean? There's no way that this like rhino, horse, elephant thing is going to walk right up to you and you're not going to pet it. You know what I mean? So it gets petted, and but it's wild. It's not a zoo animal. It's not someone's pet. But it just walks right up to you. And then the monkeys will oftentimes jump on your shoulder or land on your head or something, and that can be a little bit. There's a higher possibility that something could happen with that. Usually only, like with capuchins, the only one you have to worry about is the alpha. And generally, as long as you don't try to take something away from it, it won't hurt you. Um, but the one in Misawali did put a kid in the hospital, but the kid tried to take something from it. So you can't do that. Capuchin monkey, the alpha, is kind of like a pit bull with jaguar teeth and opposable thumbs. So, you think like, oh, it's a cute little monkey. It'll rip your head right off your shoulders, like without any effort. So, you have to have monkey awareness. The spider monkeys too, they're less likely to touch you, and if they do, it's best to just be very still. The capuchins, I'd handle them and play with them or whatever. If an adolescent ran up on my shoulders, there's videos of me doing that on the channel. I think definitely on TikTok. Um, that's generally okay, but spider monkeys and squirrel monkeys are a little bit more likely to try to tear your face off. Uh, What else is there in terms of wild animals? I mean, jaguar obviously are not going to bother you. There have been more instances of jaguar coming like into neighborhoods and stuff in the last. In fact, a yampe, which after we leave, when we're done with our retreats, which by the way, if everyone that I'm talking to right now pulls the trigger, we'll be full, and it's the last one. So if you're thinking about it, we have like 3 or 4 more spots. People make deposits, and then it's done because I'm keeping the group small. So if you're still considering that, now would be the time. We are doing April 2nd through April 29th for sure, and other times between now and then are possibly open. You can talk to me about it if you want to come as an individual or as a couple. That might be something that we could consider. But Yeah, if you don't want to miss meeting Mama Celia and coming to Ngaru, then this is the time to pull the trigger. Uh, any other questions? Immunizations. I think I answered that. Here in this particular part of the jungle, there's not a lot of malaria or yellow fever. I guess is the same thing. There is dengue apparently, but I've only heard of like one case of dengue. And the reality is, plant medicine actually works. This is maybe a shock to a lot of people, but I've been for years now comparing indigenous claims to the research, and oftentimes I don't have to because at the top of the paper it just says indigenous claims basically confirmed or words to that effect. That's what it'll always say. So honestly, I don't even check anymore. When the Quechua ladies tell me that this plant is for this, I'll just go ahead and take it and trust them. Another thing is, and foreigners that live here know this too. It's where I first heard about it. If you get like COVID or some other sort of serious illness, the shaman will come and prepare for you some kind of concoction made from usually cascarilla and chuchawasi. And you drink one big cup of it. It's very thick and bitter and really difficult to drink the first day. And then the second day, you drink the next cup. And then in every case I've ever heard about, whether it's dengue or whatever the illness is, it just goes away. What languages do they speak here? The Quechua speak Quechua. Quechua is actually Incan language. That's the language the Inca spoke, and it the most of the Quechua, from what I understand, were the descendants of slaves of the Inca. So that's why they all speak Incan, basically. And I'm pretty sure that the Quechua, at least in this part of Ecuador, are actually sort of a conglomerate of all sorts of different tribes because once they were rounded up from the jungle and enslaved, the Shuar bred with Warani bred, you know what I mean? So I think the Quechua are just really mixed up because a lot of the other tribes, oh yeah, the jungle can heal you all right. I was extremely sick when I came here, and I'm not 100%, but I'm a lot better than I was. I mean, look at my old videos from 2 years ago. You can see it. And I'm still learning all the time. There's a sensitive plant here the other day that what I was saying is that most of the tribes, you can tell by looking at someone, oh, this lady's Warani or this person is Shuar or whatever. The Quechua look more like everybody, like all different, like you would mistake one person for being Warani and someone else for being Shuar, and I think that's because of the slavery. Their genes are much more mixed up. Um, But yeah, what I was saying is I just discovered a plant. I mean, I didn't discover the plant. It's impossible to miss. There's this sensitive plant that when you touch Mimosa pudica, the leaves close, and it has purple flowers. There are different sensitive plants, but this particular one is Mimosa pudica, and it has been studied, and all it's used in Ayurvedic medicine and in South American shamanism, and it helps with snake bites, rheumatoid arthritis. It's an antispasmodic, anti-fertility, aphrodisiac, antidepressive. Um, oh man, I know I'm missing some. And all of this supposed, all the folklore, folk medicine spectrum has been researched, and all of it turned out to be true. And it's just this one plant that also contains 5-MeO-DMT. So, which is probably why it's antidepressive. And so when you are consuming this, it doesn't have a lot of 5-MeO-DMT, so it's like microdosing 5-MeO-DMT, and then you have like this whole antibacterial and antiviral as well. Um, so it's incredible, and I've been walking by it every day, but there's just so many plants. I hadn't gotten around to researching it yet, so I researched this plant and found out like, oh my god, here's another just absolute beast of a medicinal plant all along the sides of the roads everywhere. And so, when you come to the retreats, you guys learn all about that stuff. We start with guayusa as our base, which, on top of all of its health benefits, also helps with lucid dreaming. The Quechua women will generally get up at 4 or 5 in the morning, drink a bunch of it, and talk about their dreams, because the dreams are considered the guide for the tribe. And so we'll start with guayusa, and then we add uña de gato, which is another like huge. It cures a huge or treats or heals. Treats, I guess, would be a better way to say it than heals. A massive spectrum of, cancer, tumors, and inflammation. Inflammation is really, I'm not going to go as far as some people and say that it's the source of all illness. That's kind of ridiculous, but it is a lot of it. And almost all of these plants have anti-inflammatory properties. But anyways, we start with guayusa, and depending on what our goals are, we might add the leaves from the ayahuasca vine, which do have the psychoactive alkaloids, but we don't use enough of them to make the tea psychoactive. And then we'll add, hibiscus flowers, maybe rabo de mono, which is a fern that has like this. It's crazy. It's just like a monkey tail. The fur feels just like a monkey. Um, and then inside it has this like hard cucumber rubbery sort of affair. um, and then mimosa pudica, put that in there, and chaliponga, which is like Ecuadorian chacruna, has DMT and 5-MeO DMT, put that in there. um, and turmeric and jungle ginger. It's actually pulled out of the jungle here. All sorts of different combinations of these incredible teas with all of this healing stuff. So, on top of drinking all of the plant medicine every day, all day, when you drink something, we're drinking these heavily medicinal teas that are made from, up to like 14 plants from the jungle all combined into one tea. And then cacao. I haven't mentioned cacao. Cacao grows everywhere down here. It's wild in the jungle, although the wild cacao is a little bit skinnier. Um, but man, is cacao incredible. It's just loaded with antioxidants and, just so minty, so many beneficial compounds that it defies belief. There's something that's in blue green algae that's also only found in, or only also found in cacao. And then it has the phenethylamines that are related to MDMA. So it causes a serotonin dump. There are serotonin precursors, so that your brain has the materials it needs to produce more serotonin after it dumps the serotonin it's been storing. And caffeine, thebaine. And a lot of people don't know this, but it's a fruit. Before you dry it and ferment it to crush the bean to turn into chocolate, it's covered in a white pith that is the most delicious thing that I've ever put in my mouth. When combined with cacao, although I ran into another fruit that's a relative of mangosteen the other day that might be better. Um, so yeah, that's basically, I was going to talk about like Andean culture, and what it's like in the mountains here. I will just say, that if you're one of those people that's thinking that Vilcabamba is some sort of haven for conscious people where everyone is an amazing hippie and things are all love and light and it's wonderful and great, I dispute that pretty wholeheartedly. I would say probably don't go to Vilcabamba. I know there are a lot of people out there that hear all these wonderful things about it. Go there to visit, sure, but watch out. It's one of the most dangerous places in Ecuador, as far as I'm concerned, anymore. There's a lot of, I think they call it basura, which is like garbage, but it's crack. There's a lot of that down there. They found a couple of people beheaded a little while ago. And honestly, the expats that live there are completely insane. They're drunk as hell. They're toxic. It's not anything like what people expect. It is superficially, but if you spend any amount of time there and actually get absorbed into the community, it's really bad. They're just it's a nut house for gringos, basically. So I would advise going to somewhere like more in the jungle and more interesting. And there's a lot of just really fake spirituality in Vilcabamba. So, I just wanted to make sure I mentioned that because I went there and it took me a while to figure it out. But before it was all said, I mean, there are literally hundreds, at least 100, because some of the people were on my side, but most of them weren't. I did a debate with a flat earther down there, and it was in this like revival tent. And after a while, I figured out that they had actually set me up. The Christian right wing flat earthers had set me up. And this is a smallish community in Ecuador, and there are so many of these people that they had, filled this giant tent. So that's really the crowd that you're amongst there. Uh, you know, 100 flat earther expats in one small Ecuadorian community. I mean, what the hell is going on? It was crazy, and they threatened to kill me and my supporters because of course they're flat earthers. I just decimated them. The debate, it was just so corny. I mean, at one point he said that the sun is electric. You can tell by looking at it. I don't know if I've ever heard a single statement that stupid come out of anyone's mouth. I mean, it's just so mind blowing. But when they realized that they were getting embarrassed, they actually started making death threats to me during the debate on camera. They still haven't released the video that they were making. Um, it was nuts. And then the interesting thing is that they were trying to make science out to be evil and associated with the Illuminati, and that's why they chose me because I'm associated with these hermetic societies. And so they thought they had this like perfect plan to prove that science was all this evil. So yeah, I don't really recommend Vilcabamba. Go to the jungle, support indigenous communities, go to one of these amazing lodges around here, and get a hold of us if you just want to come and see the jungle. You don't necessarily have to join a full retreat. Ngaru does just rent rooms. So, um, yeah, but that would be my recommendation. Go to Misawali, go to Macas, the outlying areas of Tena, but don't fall for the Vilcabamba trap. It's just not what people say it is. I mean, I could go on and on about that, honestly. I mean, there's also Earth Pulse down there, which is supposed to be like a spiritual school where they teach you about ayahuasca and how to. It's just new age bullcrap. And I actually met with the founder of the school because they said they were going to be a mystery school that also incorporated ayahuasca. I asked him what lineages of the mysteries he had studied, and he said to me, "I'm not even kidding you. They had already started teaching online courses." And he honestly answered me, "I really need to get started on that." $4,000 they're charging people to sign up, and he hadn't even started doing research before they launched the course and people had signed up. So they're still down there scamming the hell out of everybody, telling people that they can become ayahuasca facilitators from taking online classes with them, which is completely stupid and insane and dangerous. So, I just yeah, if you do go to Vilcabamba, just be on your guard because it's like a trap, you know. It sounds wonderful, and then you get in there and it's just a bunch of like fake new age like scam artists and then also crackheads. So I don't recommend it at all. And that is the last thing that I have to say in regards to the negative aspects of South America is mostly the foreigners. It's kind of humiliating to be white down here and from the United States because you know it becomes obvious pretty quickly that there is entitlement. It's not white privilege entitlement. It's just American or European entitlement because they feel like, especially I think like the boomer generation, it's like they're programmed to believe somehow that because they're from the United States, they're entitled to just come down here and exploit people so that they can live off their retirement until they die. Like people will tell you don't tip because then they're going to expect it. And that always just makes me sick. Like, you'd feel like they shouldn't live like shit so that you can stand, I mean, and the reality is that people in those countries have been standing on the backs of these people in order to have cheap fruit and cheap labor and all this stuff for hundreds of years. And then they come down here and expect that, that they should be able to just exploit everyone and they feel entitled to do so. Um, the worst case of this was at the last property we rented to do our retreats. And the reason that we left is that the woman that owned the place one night came down because she knew that I would pay them as much as I could afford to, and the local indigenous people. And so we had actually a client sitting next to me when she said this, which was, I could not believe it. But she said exactly that, just don't pay them more than $15 a day because then they'll start expecting it and they'll be coming around with their hands open all the time. And just a tone that she was using when she was talking about this. And these are her neighbors that live on dirt floors and they're all drinking themselves to death because they're so broke and depressed and there were a couple of teenage suicides, all this stuff, and this woman just don't pay and you know what the minimum wage here is? 22.50 a day. So she was basically insisting that we didn't pay the people a fair amount of money, even the basic legal minimum wage, so that she could continue to exploit them. She was worried and told us this much, that if we pay them the minimum wage, they're going to expect it. So don't screw up my little slavery operation I've got going on here. And she, it was like the people from these countries are so conditioned that they're entitled to, they're just superior just because of their nationality. Um, that she didn't even think she was saying anything horrific. And so it's really common. So that, for me, maybe surprisingly, like people think, well, South America, the worst thing must be all the poverty, or the worst thing must be all the crime, or whatever. No, it's Americans, and just the um, dirty looks and the negative expectations that people have when they see a white person, because we have so many gringos that come down here expecting that they should be able to just exploit everyone, and will actually indoctrinate other people into the exploitation economy. um, that is just, it's just really sad, that people feel like that's okay. um, but for the most part, I would highly recommend. Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's kind of a cool place. There are some interesting people there, but there's also a lot of like really superficial kind of scam artist, fake spirituality, and crackheads. It's kind of dangerous. People are getting robbed more and more often, actually murdered. So yeah, I mean, I would go for a week or something, and there's a get a hold of me if you want. I know a good ayahuasquero there if you're interested in having some ceremonies in Vilcabamba. Um, Gaia Sagrada, the pretty well known retreat center there, is it's fine, it's safe, but definitely the facilitators and they're just like really, 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 really egocentric new agers, and it's really, really not authentic or even sincere. But you'll be safe, you know. There's no threat of anything bad happening, but it's definitely kind of bunk, I guess, at best. Uh, do they use combo out here? Not so much traditionally, but because of the plant medicine scene, the industry, I guess, the different medicines are crossing tribal borders, which is something that's always happened to some extent. But now you might go to have an ayahuasca ceremony with a Quechua person, and they'll blow rape into your nose, and that's a Brazilian thing. It's the Kaxinawa and the Yanomami and all of these people. It's not Quechua. You'll have Kofan hosting San Pedro ceremonies instead of ayahuasca, and so there is some blending, and now combo has moved into the area, but I don't think it's a traditional medicine here. It's just that that's if you're interested in that kind of stuff, that's probably the one of the second worst thing about the ayahuasca industry. The worst thing, of course, is when women get taken advantage of, and those kind of situations where people are actually harmed. But the other thing that happens that isn't good is that industry uh, standards are replacing traditional protocol. So shaman will abandon their own traditional practices in order to conform to what they think you probably have read on the internet and expect them to do, rather than what they actually would traditionally do. And I know the difference because I've been actually, involved in ayahuasca and studying plant medicine since the 1990s. And so I know that a lot of this stuff didn't exist 20 years ago, or that it specifically was, a Shipibo thing, and now you have Shuar that are saying it or whatever. So there's a lot of, because of the ayahuasca industry, there's a lot of scrambling of traditional practices, and a lot of things are probably being lost. Um, but yeah, so anyways, you guys, my family's probably getting hungry. We're gonna walk down to a local lodge and see um, how the yucca fries are. And we didn't talk about a lot of stuff like the food, eating yucca fries down here, the maitos, which are usually fish or chicken, but sometimes chantakuru, which is a big palm grub that's wrapped in a leaf and then uh, grilled, sort of, I guess, just roasted over coals. Plantains, just throw them in the fire, just in the peel, um, in the coals, and pull them out and eat them. It's amazing. Uh, but I'll do some more streams where I'll talk more about this, um, or maybe I'll just make videos because my internet's so bad that the buffering is ruining my streams. It seems like. But thank you guys so much for spending this time with me. Please like, share, hit the Cash App and PayPal up. Don't be shy about that for sure. We're demonetized, so we get no advertising income or anything. And we're trying to do good work here. We're rescuing strays and getting them spayed out of pocket, which is I'm not thrilled about that because it's just. But there's just so many street dogs and they're all starving. I mean, I've made videos about this. We'll find the street dogs and they have like bot flies eating them and they're skeletal and so we've been putting a lot of money into that lately and so we're not we're down here doing good work and it's we need support in order to continue doing it. About a portal under the influence of plant medicine, Dr. Sethos, also Alan Shoemaker's mentioned the spirits when he's. I'm not sure who Alan Shoemaker is, so I'm not really sure what that's about. I don't know exactly what you mean about the portal. I was thinking earlier about how a lot of the shamans talk about these portals in Peru that supposedly go into other dimensions and whatnot. But I have not been there and I have not seen them, so um, I don't know what a GPS map trek video is, but I probably could look into it and see about maybe doing it. Um, oh yeah, okay. Hello, Cynthia. Um, I'll probably, I might even do a music live stream later, just because I need to practice anyways. I am learning a bunch of new material for when we're conscious, we're in frequency, then under the influence.